What's going on, everybody? This is Jamar Jones with Darren Marks here as your host for the R&R podcast, Real Raw Business, where we cut it to you straight. No fluff, no sugarcoating going on here. It's going to be real business that we're talking here today. And we got a special guest in the building. This guy's special. We got a lot of great topics we're going to be talking about today. He is a digital marketing specialist. He is also a LinkedIn instructor, combined 37 years in this business and marketing. He's also business development for Heritage Printing and Cultivate Communications. We got none other than Bob Hill.
Bob Hill in the house.
I made it today. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Hey, it's great to have you on.
Thank
Awesome.
You made it all the way over here from
Brookfield.
Brookfield.
I think it
It's
was
a long trek.
3 miles,
Yeah.
but I did drive.
Yeah, you did drive over here. You didn't walk it.
No, it's winter in Wisconsin.
It's a little
We don't-
chilly today.
Yes, a little chilly outside.
Well, cool. Yeah, we're going to dive right in to the first topic. Which is, what's revenue got to do with it? You know, that's the first topic we're talking about. Basically, how does a company grow its revenue? And I know that Bob here has a ton of experience with growing companies' revenue with a lot of different means, marketing strategies, and different approaches. So the first question we got for you is, for a company, you know, trying to get out there and get more leads and get more brand recognition, what do you suggest for them?
Sure. Well, I think you first of all have to put together a program that's unique and custom for the type of industry that the company represents. More specifically, what business are they? And then most important is, what is their marketing strategy? Because if you don't understand their strategy, then you really are not going to be effective in delivering what they're looking for. So once you understand that, then we use a system at our company where we start with what we call a marketing awareness program, where we want to create awareness with the client's potential customer. Okay. And we do that through multiple channels, which could include social media. It could include email blasts. It might include direct mail, a combination of all of the above. Certainly social media, Google AdWords, pay-per-click, search engine optimization, all of these things that you hear about in the industry, but are very important to having an effective marketing strategy. So once you have that awareness created, and from there you lead them through what we call a buyer's journey, and that journey involves a very strategic approach to taking that client's potential customer into what we call the engagement process. That's the most important part, right? Because if you're marketing and you're not getting any action, or you're not getting any response to your marketing initiatives, then it really is a waste of time and a waste of money. So the goal is, how do we get engagement? And that's really the key behind all of the pieces that I was mentioning before.
Okay. And I got another question. So what if the company doesn't even have a strategy? Well, I know you said that's the first part. You know, what are you even doing? We come across a lot of companies that don't even have a strategy at all.
Right.
Like, their strategy may be one or two things.
They throw a lot of darts, see what sticks.
Yes.
That's kind of their strategy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we often call that the spray and pray model, right? So we're going to send out 50,000 postcards, and we're not going to get any responses, and we're going to wonder why not one came back, right? Yeah. So that is really an important question, because there are companies that spend a ton of money on what they call their marketing strategy, and they get very little feedback from it. So you have to have data analytics behind what you do. And I think that's what makes us unique from our competition. One of the things, at least, is that we tie data analytics into everything that we do. So we're going to give you a report on not only the strategy, but how it performs. in the marketplace. But to answer your question, if the company doesn't have a marketing strategy, then one of the things that we have to do is really identify what is their goal, what are they trying to accomplish. So what we do is we go through what we call a discovery process.
Okay.
We try to understand from them what does the end game look like? What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if you are looking to get as many leads as possible, let's say we bring back 1,000 leads, but you're only able to handle 50 of them.
Yeah.
What do we do to the 950
Yeah,
people?
rarely people think about the other side of the
other side,
spectrum.
the flip side,
Exactly.
What's your capacity? What can you even handle?
What can you handle? Absolutely.
Right.
So that's all part of the strategy is what type of resources do you have, who do you want to go after, and how are we going to do it?
Perfect.
Gotcha. Because I know that a lot of times, like because we do the same thing too, where we do, a pre-evaluation and evaluation with companies to figure out like what's really going on, because a lot of times you can have a couple conversations and then you start diving in like in your discovery phase and you're like, oh, you didn't tell me about this.
That
that's a little bit,
everything.
that changes a lot of the approach we're going to be doing.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that was going on.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think people are just overwhelmed when it comes to marketing.
Yes.
People don't know what to do. And actually, I had a post about this the other day when I was just saying, like, I think people overcomplicate their marketing strategy.
Right.
Instead of getting down to the core needs of what a human is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to say, like, how do I connect with that person?
Right.
And I think people just overdo it, or they get sold something from somebody else of a strategy or a plan that potentially could work,
Right.
but it doesn't fit their model
Right.
of what they're doing. So I love how you guys actually do the discovery phase.
Yes.
And because a lot of people have the templates.
They have the templates. Well, they have the mindset of in their own head of they got to check mark these boxes.
Right.
So this is what we need. So
Right.
they'll come to you or us and say the same thing, right? They'll just be like, well, we need leads
Yes.
to build
Right.
a pipeline
Exactly.
that'll generate revenue. And you're saying, let's take a step back.
Right. How many leads can
How
you
many
handle?
leads can you handle? Those are things they don't think about.
Right.
And that totally affects their revenue and their growth and scalability.
Absolutely.
I think it's a big scalability is really big and overlooked. Companies want to grow fast, but it's well, what would happen if all of a sudden you had an influx of a 200% growth?
Sure.
What would that do to you?
Right.
You'd be scrambling to hire people,
Right.
So it's these things that companies don't think about.
Right. And the last thing you want is to have that happen, and then you get a negative impact because you didn't respond.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're out there, you did every effort possible, A+, did everything you could, and then the customer didn't get a call because you didn't have time to call them back.
Right.
Or they did get a call, but it was 3 weeks later. And you're talking about how great we are with response time, but we didn't deliver it. So
Right.
really important.
I think that people want to know too when you're talking about revenue. So what's 3 tips that you can give just on a high level? Because I know you do the discovery phase, you have a certain process and a methodology to going about their marketing. But what's 3 tips you can give a company to just grow revenue, let's say in the short term, and then let's say in the long term?
Okay, so I would say one of the tips that I would give is you have to determine your brand and who you want to be to your client. I mean, one of the greatest examples that I think we have out there is if you look at the Nike logo, you don't have to look at who their name is. You can identify the brand by the logo. Right. So you want to brand yourself so that when somebody looks at your logo or they see a color or they see an image, they know that it's you. And I think that's really important, is to create the right brand. And I think the next part of that is to put the proper campaign together. You have to put a campaign together that's very methodical, where you're delivering those things that I talked about earlier, emails and social media and direct mail, but you're doing it in a format so that you're not blasting somebody with everything at one time, but you're doing it as a campaign. Yep. So you're going to have this piece sent out this week, this piece sent out the next week, and then you have to also realize that it's not going to be, you're not going to have a one-hit wonder. It's not going to happen right away where somebody's going to engage because you reached out to them one time.
Wait a second. Can you say that again? I just want to make sure our audience understands what you just said.
You are not going to be effective if you only reach out once.
Okay.
Okay?
How many times is the average, the times you got to reach out to somebody to actually get a reply back to get something going?
Great question.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it depends upon the product, the service, the industry, but let's use a number of probably 6 to 10 touch points maybe before you're ever going to see a result from that. So it's not an overnight deal. It's something you have to invest in. And we're not just looking to make money on this.
Yeah.
This is a very true method. Yeah. So it's proven.
So you actually got to, court the prospect a little bit before you want to lock it in with them.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely. You got it.
You're not just going to talk to them once and be like, hey, come back to my place.
Right, right.
It don't work that way.
By the way, we're hiring, so if you want to come on over, you're doing a great job talking about marketing for us. I love it.
No, that's good. So we got, I think that's great feedback. And I think that the rule of thumb is not to overcomplicate the growth of revenue with your company.
Correct.
But it's also understanding that you're doing it for the long run and you're not always doing it for short-term gain.
Absolutely.
Grow the brand, understand that you have to really cultivate your clients, your prospects. You have to really reach and engage them in different capacities.
Correct.
Especially nowadays. I mean, a lot of times I always tell people in companies that people are more educated than ever.
Right.
So you just saying that our product and service is better because of X, Y, and Z, it doesn't work anymore.
Correct.
You got to give way more to it, and you have to be able to educate and advise, people to figure out what the best decision is.
Absolutely. And diversify your technique as well. I mean, it's not going to be email in one case. It might be a direct mail piece. Right. So you have to figure out what's going to work best.
Absolutely. Well, cool.
Perfect. All right, it brings us to our next topic, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Hit
or miss. So since Bob is a LinkedIn instructor, guru really, you got a lot of great insights. And stats, actually, of LinkedIn itself. So I'd love to hear more of your hit or misses.
Okay,
because
sure.
As we were talking just a few seconds ago, I've had a lot of LinkedIn don'ts this week, but I had a lot of LinkedIn do's this week, a lot of good and a lot of bad. So I think people underutilize LinkedIn the correct way.
Sure.
It's a powerful tool. Plain and simple.
Well, that's the first step right there. I'm impressed that you're using the tool. I mean, you're not going to have the hits or misses if you're not using it, right? So that's the very first thing is you've got to get on LinkedIn.
Get on LinkedIn.
Get on LinkedIn.
You have to. 660 million people are using this tool around the world.
Yeah.
And most of them are not in the United States, which is really interesting. 2 people per second are joining LinkedIn. So by the time we finish this podcast, there's going to be thousands more people on LinkedIn than there were when we started.
Right.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, so it's definitely a necessary tool. And I would say, first of all, it's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, it is not Snapchat, it is a business tool.
Yeah, so don't post pictures of your kids and your dogs and, I mean, you can, but, it's usually used as a business tool where people are there to learn and educate.
Absolutely. And speaking of pictures, if you go to a LinkedIn class or you talk to a certified LinkedIn instructor, one of the first things they're going to tell you is how important your photo is on LinkedIn. You have to have a photo on LinkedIn. Most people that don't have photos on LinkedIn usually don't have the activity that they are looking for.
Right.
And it should be a professional photo. It shouldn't be a picture of you with the dog in the park or, your favorite tiki bar and things like that. It's got to be a professional photo.
Yeah.
Definitely. And, we laugh at it, but you look on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people that just haven't figured it out.
They don't have a photo. And I think that I just don't trust them. No. I mean, point blank, because in social media, people want to have that kind of like, who are you?
Right.
And if you don't have that picture, I'm just kind of like, well, I don't know who you are.
Yes.
So why am I even going to even engage?
Yeah.
You know, I don't even see a face.
Right.
Yeah, just nothing, you
Right.
know? So I definitely think that's very important. You definitely should now, to kind of second what you said too, show a little bit of personality, I think, in your photo if you can.
Yes.
You can make it professional, but you can also show a little bit of your character.
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of creativity with that photo, with a good professional photo, but also having something that says like, oh, this person is into this, or this is the character of that person. Maybe it's not always just the you know, the corporate headshot look, you know, it can be, you know, a smile, it could be a
if you're in
an
fashion
accent
or you're an artist, you need to portray that, right? I mean, versus a salesperson who sells elite software, and their picture is at your favorite tiki bar,
right?
You know? So it, you know, there's some differences there.
Right. If I'm selling orthopedic equipment for you know, a hospital, I'm probably not going to want to have a bar scene in my picture.
Probably lose the mohawk.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You can stand out without being ridiculous, but yeah, and I think we should jump into really it's a great lead generation tool.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is where the rights and the wrongs come into play.
Absolutely.
And you've been using it for probably more years than I have.
Okay.
But I'd like your take on how should somebody use LinkedIn as a lead generation tool the right way?
Sure. So I've been on LinkedIn since 1994. I have grown to the maximum number of first-level connections that you can have, which at this time is 30,000.
Wow.
So one might wonder, why would you need 30,000 connections?
Why not?
You don't, right? Why not? I mean, people will argue the wider the musky net, the more opportunities you have to communicate with people, and so that leads into millions of second-level connections and even more millions of third-level connections.
Right.
But it's a two-way street. LinkedIn is about searching, right? It's about finding out information and data and things that you want to know about a specific individual. And it's also about being searched. You want people to find you, especially somebody that's out looking for a job.
Yeah.
There's a whole section on job searching alone that can be very powerful on LinkedIn. So you want to be sought out in certain cases. But I use it as a lead generation tool in my business to find the individual within the corporation that I'm looking to find. And the most powerful part about LinkedIn is that you can get very granular, right down to the person's name and title. And then once you find that person, I mean, my gosh, you can get all kinds of information about them, from their background, where they've worked, where they went to college, what their interests are. And why wouldn't you use that when you pick up the phone and reach out to that person or send them an email and say, oh, by the way, I noticed you do this or did that, or you went here or do this. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's a connection already made that you would never have had before.
Yeah, you get the backstory on who to go to. And before, you're just kind of like rolling through a list of different, different companies, and you're having to kind of fish and figure out who you should be talking to.
Absolutely.
Who's the decision maker, and then you got to figure out more details about like what's their backstory, and you didn't even really have that information, probably what 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you didn't even have that information. So it's kind of going off of that as far as with using the information. I think that people know that it's a lead generation tool, but they don't utilize understanding where people's backstories are and how to interact with them.
Right.
So we get a ton of messages, and I know you probably do too, on just purely sales messages. I'm talking books, and you open them up and it's like, it's not in, hi, how are you? Let me learn more about you. It's, this is all about me. And this is my service. And at the very bottom of that story in that book that you just read, it's like, please schedule a 15-minute call with me if you're interested in my service. I'm like, I'm not interested in nothing.
Right.
I don't even know you.
So you talked about the don'ts.
Yeah.
This is at the very top of the don'ts. What you just said.
I have the king of don'ts. I showed Jamar this last week. It was a connection that looked viable.
Yeah.
And I always schedule an introduction call with a new connection because I want to know who I'm connected to.
Right.
And this gentleman, who's the CEO of a company, sent me an intro video. So I thought, oh, this is kind of neat. Until I turned on the video and it was 28 minutes long, and the second slide on there was a disclosure.
Oh boy. So how many minutes did you watch?
Well, I got to the disclosure like 30 seconds in, and then I was.
I'm not gonna lie, I skimmed through it because I was just dying of laughter.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this isn't an introduction. You got a pricing option in there. You got, it was a full like demo presentation, and this was their introduction. I'm like, if this is the intro, I can only imagine what the next step's gonna be.
This is a big D-O-N-T.
Oh yeah.
I don't even want to know.
That was the king of don'ts. Yeah. I mean, the in-mails are bad enough when people just sell you their services and don't know anything that you do.
Right.
You know, it goes a long way to make that intro.
Right.
You know, just real quickly, let's touch base and, know who you are.
Absolutely. Right. I totally agree with your comment earlier about the whole premise of the introduction. And that's about engaging in a conversation like we are doing right now.
Right.
And you learn about the person, ask some good questions, just like you do in the discovery process. Yeah. It's not about selling yourself out of the gate, because 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10, they're just going to delete it and they're not going to pay any attention to it.
I mean, how do you think we got Bob here?
Yeah.
Right? We engaged on LinkedIn and we had some conversations, came to the office, got to know each other.
Absolutely.
So, and now he's here on the podcast with his awesome insight.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn used right way by the man who knows how to use it and has done it since 94.
Right.
Listen to the tips.
Stop selling and start conversating, with people.
Yeah, I would say one of the most underutilized parts of LinkedIn that people don't use and really should is the advanced search capabilities. So you have the capability of using, everybody does, by the way, whether you have a free account, a premium account, whatever account it is, you have the ability to do searches. And those searches are extremely powerful. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're looking for people that you went to school with, because you already have that common bond. I went to this university, you went to this university. You can find those people by using that search engine. And all you have to do is, under the search bar, key in the name of the school, and you can even do it by the year that you graduated, or you can do all the alumni if you want to, and then all the people will pop up that are in your sphere or your muskie net on LinkedIn. So that's a great tool, and I do that a lot. I call and say, hey, I understand you went to the same school I did, and it's a common ground right out of the gate.
Oh my God.
And that way they're not going to necessarily hang up the phone on you.
So it's finding a better approach to starting a conversation than just blasting out messages left and right. It's like, hey, we have this common ground. Let's start here. We went to the same school, or hey, I see we were actually worked at the same company at one point, maybe different times, but we were there. Hey, I noticed this connection. I'm actually best friends with, Tony, and I just thought I would make a introduction, just to see. It's about kind of going, I like to call it always the backdoor approach, then going through the front door. Yeah. You don't want to go to the front door at the club because you're going to be there for quite some time. No one knows you, and you're going to be sitting there. The bouncer's like, hey, and they're just letting people in left and right. Yeah. You want to go through the back door so that way you get the right treatment and, the owner, and, you get the right type of service that you want, and experience. And that's, I translate the same thing to business. You want the backdoor approach, and that's really simply about finding a common ground with somebody instead of going knocking on their front door and saying, hey, let me in.
Right. Exactly.
It's harder to do that.
Yeah. True. By the way, I love your analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I go to clubs, I usually go through the back door.
There you go.
How do you think I get around the Fiserv Forum like I do? It's a great idea.
Exactly. So I think the last thing too for people with LinkedIn is, so we talked about lead generation. We talked about it's a powerful tool, different power searches you can do. The one thing is content. So I think the biggest problem why people don't do content is judgment.
Right.
Because they don't know what everybody else is going to think when they post it. People always try to have perfect videos.
Right.
Or, the perfect photo, the perfect post, the perfect blog post, just, this one's really going to hit.
Yeah.
What do you suggest to just get people started on content, just building up that LinkedIn profile?
Absolutely. So when I talk to other gurus in the business and that my peers that are much smarter than I am, these are my mentors, the people that taught me what I know about LinkedIn, the very first thing you need to do is you have to have a good headline. If your headline is not effective, you're not going to be searched out properly. You're not going to be known in the LinkedIn world like you should be. So it's not about the what, it's about the why. So don't put in your headline, I work for such and such company.
Okay.
Because people don't care as much about that as to why do you work for such and such company.
Right.
In other words, in your headline, you should put what you're really passionate about, what it really makes you who you are. What are the gifts that you have that you can bring to the marketplace that people don't have, that are going to make you different and stand out? So your headline is really important. And by the way, the search engine on LinkedIn is probably more powerful than Google from what I've heard. And so as people are searching, what's in that headline is going to be what's going to come up on the search.
What's going to pop up.
Absolutely. So
Wow.
I don't put on my headline that I am with Heritage Printing, okay?
Yeah, right.
I am a digital marketing strategist.
Yeah.
All right, there's a difference.
Yeah.
People aren't searching heritage. They're not looking for
a great point.
They're looking for the title and what you can do for them. It's the why. It's the why.
Yeah, and I would also
great
say
takeaway.
too, and like a lot of the video content that we post, it's all about the title too. It's about that first few lines that you're gonna really grab somebody to watch the rest of your content, the rest of your video.
Absolutely.
So it's about, hey, how can I grab somebody's attention almost like a newspaper? What's that headline looking like?
Yeah.
And then that's going to get me to dive into the rest of the content.
Right. And the other thing you want to do is stay away from the it's all about me, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of people out there like that CEO you were talking about, because it's not all about me. So, we live in a world where you get more than you give, right? And so I truly believe that in my walk and in my world. And so the more you give to people, the more you're going to get back. So what I mean by that on LinkedIn is you're not there to sell as much as you are to help. And the more that you help people, the more that they're going to help you. Yeah. And it just is a fact. Really,
it's the way the world works.
It is. It's so true. And LinkedIn is no different.
Yeah. That's some reason people still haven't figured it out.
Right.
Right.
They will now.
So if you guys can resonate with a lot of this information that we've said here on LinkedIn, we would love to hear your comments on what's worked for LinkedIn for you, to help somebody else out on their journey. All right, we've made it to our last topic, the untold truths about print. And since Bob has been in the print industry for a long time, seen many things, many changes that have happened, we got a lot we want to dive into about the print world because of the old ways versus the new ways, what works, what doesn't work, the transition, and also people's kind of perception on print, like where is it with the whole digital age and stuff like that that's going on. We got a ton of stuff we want to dive into. So the first question is print still viable?
Well, let me give you some perspective on print. The first one is when you open up your dictionary and you look up the word print, it's not gone. It's still in there, okay? It hasn't been torn out. Print is still in the dictionary. Yeah. And there's a definition for print, and it still applies today. What I would say to you is the old print is different than the new print. And I believe that print today is different than print was 20 years ago. There's no question that people that are watching are going to say, that print has gone and it's changed to digital. And the newspaper industry is in the tank, and nobody reads magazines anymore, and you see all kinds of changes because of the digital world. But when it comes right down to it, there are certain parts of print that are very, very strong today and are actually preferred over other types of media. And so it really depends on the audience and the message and what you are printing that will determine whether you should do it or not. And so I'm here to say that it's not gone. And I have some presses that I can show you that are running right now that actually have print on them. And so it is still very viable today.
Yeah. So you're seeing so with the companies that you're working with, are you still seeing a good return on their marketing efforts through print?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you will see a good return if you are, again, measuring the effectiveness of what the print is doing for you. So in other words, print has staying power, right? I mean, if you have an email, usually an email is deleted according to industry statistics within 7 seconds of you looking at it. Where with print, it can literally sit on a table or on your desk or on a credenza or whatever for months after it's printed, and people can come back time and time again and look at it. So from that perspective, print has staying power. And it's not all print that has staying power. It's that which is the most effective for what you're trying to convey. So I would say that your image should be put in print. I think that your brand needs to be put in print. And I think that your content, your marketing content of who you are and who you are in the marketplace and what you represent could be very valuable in print because that all is required to have staying power.
Okay. So, staying power is that's the word right there. That's the key word that, because we even have a lot of print stuff still around the office here that where, the emails have come and gone and we still got print land here around the office that we, take a look at every once in a while. Dan, I know that one thing I know you can talk a lot on is in the supply chain world, that transition between, I got to get my mailers out. I got to get, at trade shows, it's, here's all my flyers, here's all my print stuff. I mean, everything was print back then.
Yeah.
Is that even still viable nowadays, or what are you seeing?
It is. It's just that they haven't transitioned into not only the staying power, but how do you stand out with your print? Right. A lot of these supply chain software companies and stuff, you go to their trade shows, it's just a rack of, a piece of paper and a brochure. I mean, nothing really stands out and it's not really cool. And they don't understand that they can do some really neat things to really stand out and have at that booth as a handout. Because they want these gadgets and, give away rubber duckies that have nothing to do with their, business. Where they could really do, instead of having a dime a dozen brochure, you could have something really neat that's going to stand out. So when people walk away, they collect it. They have that swag bag. They're on the plane. They open up this awesome looking brochure that explains I think that's kind of the failure, or that's overlooked when it comes to print. I think it's just an assumption of, like that Geico commercial that's out where they're just printing. It's nothing really neat.
Exactly.
And you do some really neat things.
No question.
That can make that happen. So I think that's kind of the fail-safe, is not seeing the possibilities of print.
Right, and to go along with that, print should never be looked at as mutually exclusive from what you're doing in other areas of social media, for instance, because you can use print to promote those things. For instance, you'll see printed pieces with a QR code. Well, if you put your phone up to that QR code, you can literally go to that company's website by using the QR code on the printed piece. You could put Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the other social media sites that you have on the printed piece. So you're actually doing it hand in hand. It's not mutually exclusive where, if it's not print, it can't be the other things. It can all work together, and that's what you want to do. is try to make them all work together.
Awesome.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, I think that when we came by your office,
right.
and when you showed us some of the pieces that you guys made,
Yes.
let me tell you this, it's definitely different than what normally you would get at a company. You know, like Dan was saying, just like the loose paper. I mean, you could just rip it if you drop it.
Right.
You know, the imagery, the graphics on there, they don't stand out. It's not eye catching, but also the feel was just totally different. And also the way how, you know, the pieces looked in the order that it was in. So as you're opening it up, it was just in a very unique format that was different than a lot of other things. And you actually showed some actual mailers that you guys use that's different than just your traditional, I mean, pretty much like, you know, you would get from a bank or insurance company or something like that, where it's kind of like, it's got the guy's face on it and you're just like, okay, whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about differentiation, and that's really what this is about is, you know, how can you make your piece stand out better than the other and the competitions? And I think design is huge. We really encourage using different coatings like you were talking about, sizes, making it unique in its construction so that somebody looks at it and has that curiosity factor and says, you know what, I got to get inside of this piece. This is really a cool looking device. As opposed to, like you said, a traditional 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you know, that has the company name on the top and looks like it was produced in the 80s. And by the way, it probably was. So, you know, you really want to try to upgrade that if you can. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. And then you wanted to touch base on the last.
Oh,
last
yeah,
point.
yeah. So with the generational shift that's happening, also with the transition from print to the digital age, we got to talk about the millennials.
Absolutely.
So I know you had talked about this before, but I want everybody for the audience to really hear this.
Yes.
What's your experience with kind of the younger generation and what they think about print? Like, how are they attaching themselves to it?
You would think right away that with everything going on with millennials that this would be a turnoff for them, but actually it's quite the opposite. We're finding that millennials, for the most part, are very interested in the world of print, and actually they prefer it in many cases because of the staying power that we talked about earlier. It's not going to get lost in hundreds of emails that they receive every day. It's not going to get lost in the minutia of the marketing that can be done otherwise. But print can stand out, and millennials are looking to stand out. And so they are looking for creativity, yes, and that can be done very effectively through different variations of print. And so I surprisingly find out myself at my ripe old age of not being a millennial that print is actually preferred in many cases.
Wow.
And you look at some millennials, for instance, that they don't want to read a book online. They'd rather have the hard copy in front of them. They go through their benefits guide when they're signing up for their healthcare package. They don't want to be scrolling through web pages to determine, you know, what
20-page PDF document that I gotta go through. It's like, oh god.
Exactly. Let me have something in my hands that has something tangible to it, and then I can put it down. And by the way, I can pick it up later if something comes up that I need to go away for a little while and come back. So all good reasons to have print, and why I think millennials are really turned on by it. So
use it in a creative way to attract that attention, and don't just think of the traditional brochure, postcard, that type of print. We're talking about creativity, using some things outside the box, because there's different things that you probably haven't even seen before that, can really stand out and be a difference maker in your marketing. I got one last kind of tail end piece of that. So we have a lot of companies that we deal with that they're still, they live and die by the mailers. Hey, I'm gonna still send out 10,000 mailers out, but we're now hearing that they're getting a lower return back on those, as far as leads that come in. Do you still feel like the ROI on mailers is that still happening? Like, can you still get a good ROI on that, or do these companies have to just be more creative now?
Yeah, I think a couple of things lend to what type of response you're going to get, whether it's 0.01 or 5 to 10.
Yeah.
And 5 to 10 is much more preferred. And so what we try to talk about with our clients is a couple of things. The value of your list is incredible. So you have to have a good list. And that list can't be a bunch of addresses on a street that you've never heard of before, and you hope that person still lives in that house.
Yeah.
That's not going to fly, right?
So no to the current owner.
No, that's not going to work, right? Yeah, we want to put your name on it, okay? So let's personalize it. In the world of digital printing, let's personalize it.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is the content is very, very important. You have to have a call to action. Yeah. You have to have some type of, well, if you do this, then we will do this.
Yeah.
In other words, maybe we'll give you a white paper if you give me your email address. Give us your phone number and an opt-in feature that we can send you a text message, and then we'll give you this. And as a result, there's an exchange going on between you and your potential client. Maybe there's a giveaway. Maybe there's a prize. You can be real creative.
Okay.
Having the piece have some type of interaction to it, as opposed to a one-way device that's going to go directly from the mailbox right into the trash.
Yeah, call us now or email. It's So it's once again, it's being creative, but also integrating it with the current technology. I love how you said with the text message, because now you're grabbing additional data. That now you're grabbing an actual phone number where you can get some text message campaigns or something else that you can, as an additional follow-up.
Absolutely.
Instead of just always going like, hey, we're going to send out this amount of pieces out, and I'm waiting, for these hot leads to come in. And it's just like, we got to show you one of, I don't know, we might have thrown it out, but we got this one from this trade show from a different company that actually sent mail here. And I was the most atrocious looking piece of the postcard.
That's the one I taped and gave you notes about.
And I made a video on it. And I'm like, this is a hot lead. He's just waiting for us to call. And I'm like, this is horrible. Everything about it was bad.
I'm not going to get a response.
So being able to use direct mail effectively to coincide with how you basically are digitizing. So it's important to have those call to actions instead of just kind of a blank canvas.
Absolutely.
Here you go. We sent it out for the sake of sending it out. That's great.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, it's great having you on.
Great to be here.
We got a last thing that we're going to do with you.
Okay.
We call it 20 questions in 20-ish seconds.
Jump in the pool. Here we go.
So here we go. These are random questions.
Deep dive.
So
okay.
Whatever comes to your mind first.
Okay.
So, first things first. All right.
Bob, question number 1. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Why?
It's my sister's favorite color.
Do you karaoke in your car?
Yes.
What's the last song you karaoke'd?
Daniel by Elton John.
Nice. Nice. People want to know.
People want to know. What's a hidden talent no one knows about you?
I've DJ'd over 800 weddings.
That's amazing. If you could be a superhero, who would you be?
Superman.
What superpower would you choose?
The ability to transport myself anywhere in the world within a second.
Nice. What's your favorite movie?
Gladiator.
If you could be a character in a show or a movie, who would you be?
I would be Jack Nicholson.
Nice. Do you prefer fruits or vegetables?
Fruits, for sure. Do not like vegetables.
I don't think anybody does. Your favorite band or singer?
U2, Bono.
Bono, nice.
Okay.
Who's a secret band or singer you listen to that no one knows about?
Andrea Bocelli.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who is your celebrity crush?
Melania Trump. I think think she's a great lady.
If you could be the owner of $1 billion company, which one would you choose?
Netflix.
Ooh, very nice. Who is your favorite CEO?
Bob Wendt, my boss.
Good answer.
In case he's watching.
Yeah, right.
Who or what do you binge watch on YouTube?
Let's see. Andre Pacelli.
What wild animal would you have as a pet?
Gazelle.
A gazelle. If you had $1 million to spend on anything right now, what would it be aside from your charitable giving you already gave?
A very large 60-foot yacht at a dock in the Caribbean.
I like the dock in the Caribbean. That's a good
Not
touch.
in Milwaukee.
Very specific. Which leads to the next question. What's a country you want to visit?
Italy.
If you could be on on this podcast again, would you?
100 times.
Awesome. All right.
Yes.
There, we got our 20 questions in 20-ish seconds.
All right. Good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show for the R&R podcast.
It was great. Yeah.
This was great. Great information. Hopefully you guys really got a lot of good stuff out of this, and hopefully it can help you in your business, your company, kind of get to the next level, or a little bit of knowledge just for you so that way you can continue to grow. If you're interested in being on the podcast, please submit below to the email address there, and then we'll definitely get in contact with you, and we'd love to have you on the show. But thank you, and till the next time.
See you again.
Peace.
Thank you.